Hello and welcome to the JWeb Aggressive Mode VPN Configuration Learning Byte. I'm Gordon Mosley with the Education Services Department at Juniper Networks. Let's get started. After successfully completing this learning byte, you'll be able to use the SRX JWeb interface to configure an aggressive mode VPN. An aggressive mode VPN is configured when one of the peers that you want to use to establish an IPsec VPN tunnel does not have a fixed IP address. So in this example, we have the Ultimate Music Corporation that has just purchased mom and pop music. And of course, we need to establish connectivity as soon as possible. And we're going to use an IPsec VPN tunnel to do that. And so the only issue that I have in establishing this site-to-site VPN is that mom and pop music, since they're a smaller organization, their security platform, their SRX firewall, is connected to the internet and it's reachable, but the issue we have is that the IP address that I am trying to establish the tunnel to is a dynamic IP address. And that creates issues when you're creating an IPsec VPN configuration. When two platforms try to establish an IPsec tunnel, they enter into what are called Ike Negotiations, Internet Key Exchange Negotiations. And the first couple of packets that get exchanged between peers during these Ike negotiations contain a value called the Ike ID. You see, I don't want to negotiate the establishment of a VPN with just any device out there that decides to communicate with me. And so the two devices exchange an initial identifier called the Ike ID in the first two packets that are exchanged between the peers. Now, and these Ike ID values are used as initial identifiers or authenticators between a pair of peers that are configured to establish tunnels between themselves. And in normal IPsec, or what are called main mode IPsec negotiations, the device IP addresses are used as the initial Ike ID values. You see, the corporate gateway has a VPN configuration that is configured to communicate with the device's IP address on the other side. And the same situation with the mom and pop music. It receives an initial Ike packet that contains the IP address of a peer that it is configured to speak to. And so since I'm configured to speak to you, the device with this IP address, and you're configured to speak with that device's IP address, the Ike negotiations can continue forward. But the issue we have, of course, in this situation is the IP address of this device, the mom and pop music VPN platform, can change. And so I can't rely on that IP address as a valid Ike ID, and the VPN negotiations can fail and the tunnels will never be established. And so when one of the platforms has a dynamic IP address, we have to configure something else besides the device IP address that can be used as an Ike identifier that the platform on the other side will accept and will allow VPN negotiations to continue. So I'm going to use the JWeb interface in this learning byte to configure and demonstrate an aggressive mode of IPsec VPN between two peers. I'm going to connect to the JWeb interface for the mom and pop music virtual SRX firewall now. This is the JWeb interface for the mom and pop music virtual SRX firewall that I'm going to use for this demonstration. When you log into JWeb, it jumps you into what's called configuration mode. So I'm going to go to the security services section and you'll see an IPsec VPN section. And I'm going to start first with the Ike phase 1 configuration. When you're configuring aggressive mode, the things that are different between aggressive mode and main mode are all configured under the phase 1, the very first section of Ike negotiations. And so there's kind of three pieces of information that you can configure. You can start with the proposal tab, right? I've already configured the VPN, and I just wanted to kind of demonstrate the values. Now, the proposal is optional. It's not something you have to configure. Let me edit it and kind of show you what it's made of. You'll give the proposal of name, something that sounds good to you. But the proposal is all about, hey, what type of hashing algorithms and what type of encryption algorithms do I want to use for the first phase of this VPN, first phase of this IPsec VPN. And so, you can specify your hashing algorithms that are required. We're going to authenticate these two peers using a pre-shared key that, it has to match. The main thing about these proposals is both devices on either side of this VPN have to use the same values. So if I use SHA-1 as my encryption algorithm and the device on the other side only uses MD5, then the VPN session won't establish because we're basically, speaking different algorithms. I can, what Diffie-Hellman group would you like to use for keying material to generate, the encryption and the authentication keys? What encryption algorithms do you want to use? And again, you can define your own custom proposals. There are already some predefined proposal settings that are in the Junos operating system, so you don't have to create your own custom proposal, but I just wanted to show that to you because it is an optional component, right? So I've got my proposal here, but again, I don't have to do that. I'm going to go to the Ike Policy tab, and this is where a lot of the magic happens. And so I want to edit this and kind of show it to you here. Your Ike Policy will get a name. I put something clever in here like Ike Policy 1. Now, here's the thing that's important. When devices have a dynamic IP address involved during Ike negotiations, you have to change the default way that the Ike negotiations happen from main mode, which is the default on an Ike policy configuration, to aggressive mode. And this signals to the two platforms, hey, you know what? One of the devices involved has a dynamic IP address here. I may need to look for a different value for the Ike ID. Instead of looking for an IP address, I need to specify some other value that can be used as my initial peer identifier, right? And remember, I said the proposal is an optional piece. If you define your proposal, you'll come in here and select, okay, well, what, encryption and hashing algorithms, and how are we going to authenticate? We said pre-shared keys and so forth. And so here's my user-defined proposal that I made. But remember, I said that there are several already predefined proposals, and as long as these meet your security needs, you're welcome to use those. So it's up to you kind of which values you would like to use. I'm just going to stick with my custom proposal here, and my proposal said that we were going to authenticate the devices using pre-shared keys. And so if I go to the Ike Policy Options tab, I can put in that key. Now the pre-shared key I put in is just Juniper, just a simple little string. And so kind of at the last part of the phase 1 negotiations, the devices will exchange, this magic word. And again, it better match on both sides. You'll put it in as plain text, but once you save the configuration, you'll see it'll be just an encrypted, gaggle of gibberish here, right? So if somebody sees your configuration, they're not going to be able to actually see the magic word there, all right? So it'll be encrypted. So those are the values for my Ike policy. And again, the main one here is I want to specify aggressive mode and define what encryption and hashing algorithms we're going to use by defining the proposal. And then we're going to authenticate with pre-shared keys. So what's the pre-shared key, right? And then the final piece would be our Ike Gateway configuration. And the Ike Gateway is tied into the Ike policy that you made, which can be tied into your custom proposal. So let's edit this Ike Gateway. You give it a name, something clever like Ike Gateway, right? And then which policy did you want me to use? Remember that part that identifies the pre-shared, the proposals that you would like to use, the encryption and the hashing algorithms. The external interface is key. Now this is the interface that is going to be able to reach the Ultimate Music SRX device. This is the interface we're going to use to initiate and complete Ike negotiations. And this is the mom and pop gateway. This is the device that has the dynamic IP address. And so from this device's perspective, this is going to be a site-to-site VPN. And this is the IP address of the remote peer. Now, the Ultimate Music Gateway does have a fixed IP address. And so this is key because this device, the device with the dynamic IP address, has to initiate the Ike negotiations because it actually knows where to send the packets to, right? So this is the IP address of the IPsec peer on the other side that you would like to initiate Ike negotiations with. And when I send my identity, my Ike ID, I can't send my IP address because, hey, it's dynamic. It could change every few hours maybe, right? And so instead of specifying an Ike ID of an IP address, I have to specify some other value. And in this example, I picked just a host name value, right? And then I need to specify a string, a field, something, some type of information that I can forward in that very first Ike packet to my ultimate music peer on the other side of the wire that they will accept. And so this is kind of key, right? So I can't provide my IP address. We're doing aggressive mode negotiations. So my Ike ID is going to be a string that the other platform will accept. Now, the device on the other side has to be configured to accept this field. And I'll show you we're going to connect to the ultimate music device and look at the configuration from its perspective here in a second, right? There are some additional options if you want to do, dead peer detection, and if there's a NAT device, device performing NAT between these two platforms, the default is NAT traversal is enabled, so it will add an additional UDP header to the packet, so we can do NAT and PAT without kind of breaking the way these IPsec packets are built, right? But so there's the entire phase one configuration. Now that's the unique piece about an aggressive mode VPN configuration, right? And then now once you're done with your phase two, we can go, or phase one, excuse me, we can go down to our phase two configuration and similar steps. The phase two does not change based on are we doing aggressive mode or main mode. All the magic, all the unique stuff is in the phase one configuration. Once phase one is done and I am now communicating with a remote peer that I have authenticated and that I have established an encrypted, secure channel with, now we move to phase two of the Ike negotiations, where we actually define the values, negotiate the values we're going to use to now encrypt the data. And so similar to phase one, I can go create a custom proposal. And again, I don't have to do this part. There are some predefined proposals, but if you'd like, you can give it a name. And again, what type of hashing algorithms and encryption algorithms and packet formats do you want to use to establish this phase two VPN with the peer on the remote side? And again, the most important thing is that the devices on each side of the wire use the same values, right? We have to agree that we're going to use the same encryption, same hashing, same packet formats, or the tunnel will fail to establish. So if you want to create your own custom proposals, or you need to, here they are. But the second step would be to define your IPsec policy. I've already kind of got one here. Let's take a look at it. So I'm going to edit this. You'll give it a name, something clever like IPsec policy 1. And what did, we want to do perfect forward secrecy, which means we want to use completely unique keying material to generate the encryption and authentication keys. For our phase 2 VPN, I don't want to use the material we used when we did the phase 1 negotiations. I want to start completely fresh. And then here's my proposal. Now in this case, I didn't pick I could pick my custom proposal that I made. Remember, I said that was optional. In the phase 2, I said, you know what? There's some pre-built ones that already come with the operating system. I'm just going to take the standard values. We're going to do triple DES encryption. We're going to do SHA-1 hashing. I'm okay with that. But you pick the values that you need for your organization. So there's my policy. And then the final piece would be to go build the VPN, right? And I've already created one called Ike VPN. What a clever name, right? And I tied it into here. Let me edit this for you, and I'll kind of show you all the values. And so the phase 2 is tied into the phase 1, and so this VPN will be built on top of this phase 1 security association that we established, this Ike Gateway that I defined under the phase 1 configuration. So those two pieces of configuration are tied together. Here's the IPsec policy that I defined, IPsec policy 1, right, with the the encryption and the hashing algorithms all defined. This is a route-based VPN, and it requires the configuration of a tunnel interface. I have another learning byte that demonstrates how to configure a tunnel interface. And so all traffic that is forwarded out this interface would be placed into this VPN tunnel and forwarded to the peer on the other side. I always like to say establish the tunnels immediately. That means as soon as this configuration is committed, the VPN is up, and as long as this device is running and up and running, the tunnel is always established. You can change that if you'd like, and then I don't establish the tunnel until I receive some interesting traffic. right, that should be forwarded across this tunnel. And then there are some options that you may need to configure. There's a VPN Monitor option where I can essentially send ICMP traffic across this tunnel and be notified if I don't receive a response. There's a value you may have to configure called, in Juniper speak, proxy IDs. Other vendors use the term encryption domains for this setting, and it identifies what type of traffic is allowed to be placed into this tunnel. Right? The default on a Junos platform is any traffic can be placed into this tunnel, but if you want to restrict that, you can set proxy IDs that are used to identify the interesting traffic. In Junos, what we'll use are security policies to control what type of traffic would be placed into this tunnel. You can some fragment options. I just left all these alone. I'm just trying to do a basic IPsec VPN, and so I'm kind of done now, right? Let me connect to the Ultimate Music Gateway, the platform with the fixed IP address. And the thing I want us to focus on, let me go back to the phase 1 configuration. I'm going to go into the properties of the Ike Gateway. And I just want to remind you, the thing that's unique here is we're doing aggressive mode negotiations. And this platform is going to specify an Ike ID or include an Ike ID that in a hostname format. And this is the unique value. This is what the Ultimate Music Gateway is going to be configured to accept as an initial identifier of this remote peer. So let me connect to the Ultimate Music Gateway, and we'll look at its configuration now. So here's the Ultimate Music Gateway. I've logged into JWeb, and remember, it places me in configuration mode. So let's go take a look at its VPN configuration. So I click on Ike Phase 1. Again, same thing. Same thing with the proposals. We're going to authenticate with pre-shared keys. Again, you don't have to configure this. Here's my Ike policy. And so let's edit this. Remember, the key is I want to set this to aggressive mode, right? And then let's go look at the gateway values. So here's my Ike Gateway. And on the peer with the fixed IP address, the Ultimate Music Gateway, here's the phase 1, or excuse me, the Ike policy that I configured this to use. Here's the external interface, right, that I can use to reach the mom and pop music gateway. And on this, I have to select, instead of this being a site-to-site VPN, and a site-to-site VPN, we're going to authenticate using the IP address. No. I want to configure this as a remote access VPN, and that remote peer is remember, he's not going to be able to authenticate initially or identify itself initially with the IP address. It was configured to pass me a hostname value, and this has to be the value that was configured on that mom and pop gateway. So when I receive that very first Ike packet to start Ike negotiations, that mom and pop music device is going to include srx1 at srx.juniper.net as its Ike ID, and I can lean, as the Ultimate Music Firewall, I can lean forward and analyze my configuration and go, let me see if I am configured to continue Ike negotiations with somebody who has presented me that type of identification. It's like you providing your driver's license to somebody. Let me look, okay, that's valid. I can continue then Ike negotiations, and I just have to hope that the pre-shared key matches and we've configured ourselves to use the same proposals, the authentication and the encryption algorithms, and we can continue the establishment of this tunnel. Now, I'm going to think positive and that all those values have matched. Once you've created the configuration, we set this to establish the tunnels immediately. And so once my configuration, I don't want to forget, here's my phase 2. Again, nothing unique here as long as the values match the platform on the other side. The thing that's unique about aggressive mode is the differences in the phase 1 configuration. So I'm going to go look now. I want to change in JWeb from the kind of configure mode to monitor mode. And this is operational mode if you're a Junos CLI person. And under here I'll see an IPsec VPN section, and I can click on phase 1 and I can see, hey, do I have any phase 1 tunnels established? And in this case, hey, I do. Here's the IP address of the mom and pop device. Now remember, that can change from time to time, right? This is a dynamic IP address, but thank goodness it's up, right? And this was configured for aggressive mode. So it looks like phase 1 was successful. And then remember, once phase 1 Ike negotiations have completed, let's go look at phase 2, right? And so I click on phase 2. I can see some statistics, but I'm going to click on the IPsec SA tab, and then here I can see the phase 2 has been established. Now the phase 2 is actually 2 one-way. When I send traffic to this host, and it's in an ESP packet format, encrypted with triple des and hash with SHA, and here's the tunnel lifetime, and when are we going to rekey all these values? And so I've successfully established both a phase 1 and a phase 2 IPsec tunnel with the mom and pop device at the other end of this connection. So in this learning byte, we demonstrated how to use the SRX JWeb interface to configure an aggressive mode VPN. Thank you very much.
Visit the Juniper Education Services website to learn more about courses. View our full range of classroom, online, and e-learning courses. Learning paths, industry segment and technology-specific training paths. Juniper Networks Certification Program, the ultimate demonstration of your competence. And the training community, from forums to social media. Join the discussion.